right before the election by saying he couldn't bring himself to support Hillary Clinton with all of her scandals and such. And he then went on to write an op-ed piece the day after the election, pointing out the fact that the Democratic Party has just moved too far to the left, and it needs to come back into a little bit moderation, move a little bit more toward the center. I thought it was a great piece that he wrote. Anyway, he's written this book entitled Putin's Master Plan to Destroy Europe, Divide NATO, Restore Russian Power and Global Influence. And it lays out a pretty sobering picture of Vladimir Putin's quest for power and what his agenda is, his master plan. The book is from Encounter Books. Doug Schoen joins me now. Mr. Schoen, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me on, Bob. But this is Doug's co-author on the book, Evan Ross Smith. I hope no one sold you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. You know what? I thought we had Doug, but that's okay. But no, listen. I appreciate you being with us. Listen, I am curious though to get your take first of all on because I know the elephant in the room is the election from last week. Of course, no pun intended here. But your co-author, I mean, he did make a lot of big news in this, certainly. And so in talking with him and such, just some of your thoughts and observations on what happened last week, and then we'll get to specifically Vladimir Putin.
Sure. I've known Doug for years, and I've worked with him for years, and happy to speak to his views on the election as well as mine. But of course, we had a really profound movement away from the Democratic Party, especially in the Midwest, and we saw quite a few voters, millions of voters, in fact, who came out for Barack Obama, refused to come out for Hillary Clinton, while Donald Trump turned out, the coalition of voters that Mitt Romney and John McCain turned out, plus one, members of the white working class and even minority voters that the Republican Party has struggled to attract.
I want to put you in the unfair position of responding to something that your co-author Doug said, but he pointed out that the Democratic Party, that the reason Hillary lost wasn't necessarily because of the scandals and the FBI letter and everything else, but that the American electorate was just not willing to go as far to the left as Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders was trying to take them. I'm curious to get your take on that.
Well, he was exactly right, Doug, when he said that. And in fact, we saw that even just the Democratic Party's base wasn't willing to go as far left as Bernie Sanders wanted to take them. And Hillary was, a compromise for many liberals in the Democratic Party, and even that was too far left for much of the country. And so, we've seen a pretty widespread rejection of the Democratic Party, not just in the presidential race with Hillary Clinton, but in the House, where the Republicans performed very well and held on to many of their seats across the country, and in the Senate, where they've retained a majority and, won seats that were supposed to be competitive by double digits.
I'm curious as well to get your take on one other thing regarding the election, that I want to get to your book and Vladimir Putin. But, I've been telling my audience knows I'm a conservative guy. I supported Ted Cruz in the primaries, but when it came to the general election, I supported Donald Trump. But one of the things that I've been using as an analogy is that regarding Donald Trump, when you go see a movie, if everybody told you it's the best movie in the world, you're going to come out disappointed, even if it's a pretty good movie. But if everybody tells you it's the worst movie in the world, you're going to come out saying, hey, that really wasn't so bad, even though it may still be kind of a bad movie. And I see kind of the mismanaging of expectations regarding Donald Trump on both sides. Evangelical Christians, some of them, and I'm part of that crowd, but evangelical Christians, I think some of them have an unrealistically high expectation of how much of a conservative purist Donald Trump is going to be, and we're just setting ourselves up for disappointment. I think he's going to govern center right, but not hard right. But I would also argue, and here's where I want to get your take on this, I would argue that many liberals in America have set the bar so low for Donald Trump that they've painted him just this side of Adolf Hitler, if not the other side of Adolf Hitler. And you watch him in the 60 Minutes interview from last night. I mean, it seems to me that liberals are kind of setting themselves up to go, wait a minute, this guy seems a lot more reasonable and compromising than the character that's been painted of him.
Well, of course, you're absolutely right, Bob. And, what liberals are going to see and from Donald Trump, who is, of course, clearly a very talented politician, but also someone who enjoys being popular, enjoys being well-liked, doesn't like to say no to people, and certainly doesn't want to be an unpopular president, let alone a failed president. We may see. He's already signaled the first thing he's going to do is a $1 trillion transportation and infrastructure bill, which, if he does it right, can maybe get 10 Democratic votes in the Senate. He may get votes from people like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, who are very liberal but also support things like transportation and infrastructure spending. And if Donald Trump does that and suddenly he's an ally of Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, liberals are going to have to rethink their position on him and whether, as you said, he really is some sort of boogeyman, Hitler-esque politician, American fascist, whatever, all the names that have been hurled at him. And to your point about, among evangelicals and how much of a conservative purist he has said pretty openly that he intends to delegate much of his domestic and foreign policy to people like Mike Pence, who are lifelong policymakers. Donald Trump knows an expert when he sees one, and Mike Pence and Paul Ryan are certainly experts, and I'm sure many conservatives can take hope in the fact that they are now dictating many facets of Donald Trump's agenda.
Right. Well, and let's face it, he started out by his first two major appointments, chief of staff, he throws a bone to the establishment in Reince Priebus, but then for his senior advisor inside, he throws a bone to some red meat to hardcore conservatives with Breitbart's editor. So, Steve Bannon. So he's spreading it around a little bit. And the $1 trillion infrastructure, if Donald Trump actually pushes through a $1 trillion stimulus plan, if you will, there's a lot of conservatives that are going to be troubled by that, myself included. And it's almost like, okay, I know this guy's a horse trader, and I know that he makes deals and negotiates for a living. Okay, fine. If he's going to give those marbles to the Bernie Sanders wing of politics, all right, fine, but there better be a whole bunch of bags of marbles that he's giving to Tea Partiers and conservatives to offset that. I'd like to think that he's really doing some serious trading, because that's a pretty big poker chip to give away.
I agree with you, and it seems like what he might try and use to balance that is something like his tax plan, lowering the corporate tax rate to 15%, simplifying the tax code, lowering tax brackets across the board. A lot of Americans could see a lot of money back in their pocket pretty quickly, and maybe some new roads at the same time. So we'll see how it plays out, and who's happy with him and who's not.
We'll see. All right, Evan, hang on just a moment. We'll pick it up from there in a couple of minutes. I want to talk about you and Doug Schoen's book, Putin's Master Plan. Vladimir